Hello students and welcome to the lecture. So students, as you can see here that basically in this lecture we are going to talk about the State Human Rights Commission. Okay. Prior to this, basically we had talked about the National Human Rights Commission, that is also known as NHRs. All right. And while we were discussing this lecture, or you can say that lecture in particular, so basically we had discussed that National Human Rights Commission is established to look after the human rights violation throughout the country. Okay. But as we know, India is a vast country with a huge population, and it is not possible that a one single organization could look after every cases in an effective and efficient manner. Okay. So that's why what we had developed over the period of time, that basically we have established the State Human Rights Commission in every state. Okay. So it is quite easy to look after the population of some particular territorial division, then look after the entire population of this country. All right. So that's why the State Human Rights Commission came into the picture. All right. And here in this particular topic of the, you can say the State Human Rights Commission, in this particular topic, we are going to discuss with the beginning of the human rights. Then we will see the human rights governance. Then we will see the supplementaries of UDHR. Then we will see beginning in India. Then we will see chronology in India. Then the introduction part. Thereafter, the composition of this commission. Thereafter, the functions of this commission. After this, the working of the commission, the Human Rights Code, and 2019 Amendment Act. Okay. So these are the topics that we are going to see here in this particular series. All right. But before starting with this, let me tell you one thing in a straightforward manner. Many times I have seen students, I have seen people who often get confused between the human rights and the fundamental rights. Okay. And I have found them, you can say on the regular basis, that they compare the fundamental rights with human rights and the human rights with fundamental rights. Or more specifically, if I will say, so basically they equals the human rights as the fundamental rights. That is half true. Okay. It is a half truth. It is not the full truth. Why? Because the human rights is a broad term. Okay. They are the rights that basically given to the person, to the individual. Okay. So that he could live free. All right. Whereas if we talk about the fundamental rights are the part of the human rights. Okay. And the fundamental rights are more specifically given to promote the political democracy. Okay. In many fundamental rights, the human rights also covered, but not all fundamental rights covers the human rights. Remember this, the human right is a broader term that includes the fundamental rights. Fundamental rights are the smaller term that covers under the human rights. Okay. So please keep this difference in your mind and do not get confused between the two. Okay. So if we talk about this, so let's start tracing the history first. Like beginning of the human rights, from where the concept of human rights came into the picture, from where it was all started, and how it was developed over the period of time. That is going to be our concern first. All right. So basically, if we talk about it, so we can say member states of the United Nations. Now, what is the United Nations? Even I have seen the people compares the United Nations with the United States. Okay, that is not true. United Nation is the multinational organization, whereas the United States is a country. Okay, so please keep your concept in a crystal clear way. Do not get yourself confused between the two. All right. So if we talk about the United Nations, then let me tell you a simple facts about it. Basically, that was the era of the world wars, like the First World War and the Second World War. The First World War was happened in 1914 to 1918. The Second World War starts from 1939 and ends at 1945 in the proper sense. All right. So basically, during this time period, the organization came forward that is known as the United Nations. It means that basically the countries had the contraventions between them, and there is no platform where the contraventions could be resolved. Okay, and even you can say there was a no platform for general talks. So that's why the organization, and you can say that's why the countries of that time started failing, that they should form a particular platform where the different countries could come, and then they could intermediate between the disputes of nations. All right. So that's how the United Nations came forward. All right. And once the United Nations formed, the another major, you can say, the development was to be the human rights. Okay. Because if we talk about the World War era, all right, in the World War era, every country that was the participatory of the World War, they had only the single goal, that is to be win. Okay. And in order to fulfilling it, what they had developed? They had developed the senseless approach, and second, the dictator approach. What are the meaning of this? If we talk about the senseless approach. So basically, at first, they had the common understanding that they would only target the military establishments. They would not harm any civilian place. But when the war goes over, basically, instead of the military targets, they also started targeting the cities of each other, in which the huge civil population was living. Okay. Thereafter, the dictator approach. What is the meaning of dictator approach? The countries who captured the territory of another country. So basically, during the war, they had developed the sense of hate. All right. And in this sense of hate, basically, the country which they had occupied, the citizen of that country, they were put under the huge torture and other things. Okay. Even the governments of the countries, or you can say of the participating countries, they had implemented various provisions that were inhuman in nature, so that their policies of war could not be criticized. So all these things were going simultaneously with each other, due to which, after the world wars, the first thing that had the major importance, that was the human rights. It means that how to treat a person as a human. Okay. And this is the demand of worldwide. It is not limited to the participatory countries only, but worldwide. So once the United Nations formed, the member states of the United Nations, they pledged to promote the respects for the human rights and to make sure the human rights should be recognized worldwide. Okay. To further this goal, the UN established a commission on the human rights. Okay. And who was the leader of this commission and who led the commission? Eleanor Roosevelt. This is important. This name is important. Why? Because here we are just talking about the starting of the human rights. Like, how does the human rights started to be formed? Okay. How does the thing started to be grown? Got it? So basically, the first commission the UN had established, that was under the Eleanor Roosevelt. And what was the task? Drafting a document outlining the fundamental rights and freedoms proclaimed in the Union, or you can say United Nations Charter. Okay. Basically, now they had thought that we should give up basic human rights to each and everyone, irrespective of the nationality they are living in. Okay. So basically, once you have decided it, now what you required? You are required the list of the rights that you are going to give them. All right. Without have that list, how will you justify that you have this right, this right, this right, not this right? Okay, and all. So basically, this particular commission that was commissioned under the Eleanor Roosevelt, that was tasked to drafting a document outlining the fundamental rights and freedoms that should be given to the individuals and that were proclaimed in the United Nations Charter. Okay, and after the constituting of the commission, the commission efforts culminated on December 10, 1948. December 10, 1948. Okay, that was the date, that was the year when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, in short known as the UDHR. Now you have got the short form. Like in your examination, if it is asked, the full form of UDHR is. So what should be the answer? You can say Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It means that this is not limited to any particular country, any particular region, any particular state, but this is available for each and everyone who is living on this earth. All right. And this was adopted by 56 UN member states. Okay. 56 states that were the part of the union, or you can say United Nations, they accepted this UDHR, this Universal Declaration of Human Rights. While the vote was unanimous, 8 nations abstained. Okay. It means that 8 nations were there who abstained, means they neither vote in favor nor vote in against. Okay. They simply put themselves out during the voting. Okay. So that was happened in the starting. All right. Now let's move forward. So basically, this UDHR often referred to as the International Magna Carta. International Magna Carta, it means the international document that contains the several privileges and rights. UDHR marked a significant development in the international law by asserting that the treatment of citizens by their own government is a matter of international concern. And why we say this? Because here, if we talk about it, okay, so let me give you a straightforward way. Basically, you have heard a name of globalization, right? What is the meaning of globalization? What is it? Globalization is basically, you can say, a term that we use to indicate the relations established over the period of time due to trade, due to cross-cultural interaction, due to travels, due to all between the countries. All right. And basically, if we talk about today's term, then globalization is, you can say, that much of developed. Like if anything happens in the USA, any internal disturbance, in any economic clash, any, you can say, culture clash, that will impact it even in India. Okay. Because of the cross nation interest. All right. So that's why during that time also, it was said that basically how does the country government treats the citizen of that country. This is not an internal matter, but this is the matter of international concern. Why? Because what happened in one country will ultimately impact the another country. Got it? It emphasizes that all rights are independent and indivisible. The preamble of the UDHR states that first is the recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, foundation of justice and peace in the world. Okay. It means that if we talk about the human family, it means that we talk about the entire human population living on this earth. Okay. So basically, they must have got the equal and inalienable right. It means that what is the meaning of inalienable? Like suppose if you belong to some particular region, if you belong to some particular class, if you want to some particular religion, then you should have more rights than others. Okay. This is alienable. But when we talk about the human rights, then the human rights promotes the principle of equality. It means that doesn't matter from where you belong, doesn't matter which caste you have, doesn't matter which religion you are. Okay. Everyone will get the equal rights. Okay. So that the foundation of freedom, justice and peace could be established throughout the world. The UDHR has had a profound impact with its principles being incorporated in the constitutions of most of the over 185 nations in the UN. Okay. It means that Universal Declaration of Human Rights, whatsoever was written down here, the principle of this UDHR was even incorporated in the constitutions of most of over the 185 nations in the UN. Okay. Although it is not a legally binding document, Okay. What does it mean? It means that suppose if some countries are not, you can say, agree with the principle, with the provisions of the UDHR, then they could not be legally binded to obey it. Okay. It's totally depend upon the discretion of the country whether they want to obey it or not. Okay. So, however, it is not a legally binding document. Still, the UDHR has gained the status of customary international law. Okay. Customary international law means that it is applicable throughout the world. It is not limited to some particular country, some particular area of the world. Okay. And it is serving as a common standard of achievement for all people and nations. Okay. So here we have seen the beginning of the human rights, like how does it was started. It was started basically during the World War time or the World War era, whatsoever restrictions we had seen. Even you can say the globalization impact also paved the way so that we could form a particular, you can say, declaration through which we could decide it that what should be the basic human rights we should give in to each and every one, irrespective of the nation, irrespective of the region. All right. Then we had found Eleanor Roosevelt was appointed as the chairman of the first Human Rights Commission by the United Nations. Okay. And he submitted the report on December 10, 1948. And December 10 is often regarded as an International Human Rights Day. Why? Because that is the day on which the first ever Declaration of the Human Rights came into existence, the UDHR. All right. Then we had seen basically the 53 countries supported the document while the 8 countries abstained them. It means that they neither support the document nor against the document. All right. After this, we had seen basically this document promotes the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family so that the freedom, justice, and peace in the world could be flourished. Okay. And basically, we can say that the UDHR principles have been incorporated in 185 nations in the United Nations. Okay. But we know this is not a legally binding document, but still it is worked as a customary international law. And it's serving as a standard of achievement for all people and nations. Got it? Now let's move forward. Here we are going to see the human rights governance. Okay. So we can say to establish mechanisms for enforcing the UDHR. Okay. It means that the UDHR was formed on December 10, 1948. Okay. So you can say the commission had submitted the particular rights, a list of particular rights and the declaration. But here what we have, but how to implement it, how to enforce that the nation should be agreed on it. All right. Because let me tell you one thing very straightforwardly. Before the United Nations, there were other organizations also in the world that were established to ensure the peace, freedom, and equality throughout the world. But what happened? They got failed. Why? Because they had many things on the paper. All right. They had propounded various things, various facts and all. But on ground, basically, those facts and figures couldn't be implemented properly. And then what happened? We had saw like there were wars, devastating wars. All right. People suffered a lot. There was a blood on the streets and all. Okay. So basically, once the UDHR was formed, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights came into the picture. The prime concern that we had got was about the enforcement. Like, should we do the thing that had been done by the previous organization, or should we do a thing that has never been done in this entire world? Okay. Or you can say, like, we just formed the UDHR and then we sit by having our hands on our knees that everything would be implemented automatically. Or should we make sure that whatsoever written down in this UDHR, in this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that should be implemented throughout the world on the ground in actual reality. So we choose the second path. It means that on that time, we were not willing to just form a document and then sit on the chair and then thought that everything would be implemented automatically. But we established a mechanism, or you can say to establish the mechanism for this, so that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights could be enforced, the UN Commission on Human Rights that was first established under the Eleanor Roosevelt. They drafted the two treaties. Okay, this is very, very important. Please pay your attention here. First is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR. Okay, and their optional protocols, along with the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, ICESCR. Okay, so remember, basically these two treaties were formulated and you can say were moved ahead by the Human Rights Commission established under the United Nations, so that the UDHR could be implemented on the ground in actual reality. The first was ICCPR, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Okay. And second one was International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. It means that not only we try to protect the people and try to give the rights to them from the civil and the political rights point of view, so that they could have the political and civil freedom, but even we thought about the economic point of view, socio and cultural rights point of view. Okay. So both are the things we had granted them. So these together with the UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, are collectively known as the International Bill of Human Rights. Okay. So here we have prepared another question also. Like if in the examination it was asked, the International Bill of Human Rights contain which of the following? Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, ICESCR. So these three things are basically there. Okay. 1, 2, and 3. These three things are basically there in the International Bills of Human Rights. So please just remember their short forms, remember their full forms. All right. Because this could be asked in the examination. Now let's move forward. Here we can say that ICCPR basically addresses the right, like the right to life, freedom of speech, right to religion, and voting. So here we can say that these rights are also enumerated in our fundamental rights. Okay, like right to life, Article 21, freedom of speech, Article 19, religion, Article 25, voting, basically that has been granted by Article 326 under the Election Commission. That is known as the Universal Adult Franchise. Okay. After this, if we talk about the ICESCR, so basically that covers the right related to the food, education, health, and shelter. Okay. So here you can say that basically by this you can get an idea that what kind of rights covers in the ICPR. Okay. Double ICPR, and what kind of rights covers under the ICESCR. Got it? Both the covenants emphasize the extension of rights to all individuals and prohibit the discrimination. It means that whether it is ICCPR, whether this is ICESCR, they are extended to rights to all individuals. And there is no discrimination on the basis of the caste, religion, the region they are belong to, the nation they are belong to. Okay. And then we can say, as of 1997, okay, more than 130 nations have ratified these covenants. Okay, the United Nations has ratified only the ICCPR. Okay, and even then with many reservations or formal exception to the full compliance. So you can say basically out of these two, double ICPR, ICE, SCR. Out of these two, only the first one is the, you can say, the covenant that the United Nations have been rectified so far. And the another one, that is the ICSCR, that has not been rectified by the United Nations. Even if we talk about the double ICPR. So the United Nations, due to the availability of resources and all to the various nations, they had provided the reservations and the formal exceptions. Okay. And they did not implemented it with the full compliance. It means that if the nations having the, you can say, some political issues, they having the shortage of the resources, then it is not compulsory that they should implement it all the rights. So they could have the reservation or the formal exceptions and not, you can say, subjected for the full compliance. Okay, that is the thing. So students, basically in this lecture, we have finished till here. In the next lecture, we will start from here. Till then, just revise the facts and figures that all we have discussed in this lecture. And let me tell you one thing very straightforwardly. Whenever the questions about the human rights come in the examination, if the question is easy, so the question will be asked from the State Human Rights Commission, the National Human Rights Commission, because everyone will be aware about it. If the question is somewhat of tricky, then the question would be asked with the current affairs part and all. But if the question would be of the standards, the correct standards, let me tell you one thing straightforwardly. The question would be asked from the beginning of human rights, from the human rights covenants, and the another thing that we are going to see in this particular series. Okay. So that's why every time I told you that please, please, please revise the facts and figures that all whatever we have covered in one lecture. Because if you are not doing this on the regular basis, the thing will be not so much welcoming for you when you will face your examination. Okay. It is my personal experience, and even it is the experience of many students whom I have mentored so far. Okay. So with this note, let's end this lecture. Okay. And thank you.